So the two arguments that Diana made, and I'm not going to, I'm going to stop referring to her as a guest at this point because she's not here to defend herself, and I really try not to jump on people when they're not here to defend themselves. So let me make this far more generic. The two main arguments that are made against our government providing subsidies to new industries. And in fact, Shano, if there's a copy of Rebooting the American Dream around here, could you toss it to me if you can find a copy? Because I would like to share with my listeners, with our listeners, what Alexander Hamilton said. Thank you, sir. What Alexander Hamilton said about this. I'm not exaggerating. This is, he could have just as easily have been talking about, here we go. This is from Alexander Hamilton's 11-point plan for American manufacturers. Item number 1, protecting duties. We call these tariffs, right? Item number 2, prohibition of rival articles, or duties equivalent to prohibitions. Obviously, this is all about stopping the importation. Item number 3, prohibitions of the exportation of the materials of manufacture. In other words, don't sell your raw materials overseas, keep them. But here's where it gets interesting. Number 4, pecuniary bounties. Pecuniary meaning, of course, money. And I'll read to you. This has been found one of the most efficacious means of encouraging manufacturers, and it is in some views the best, though it has not yet been practiced upon by the government of the United States, unless the allowance on the exportation of dried and pickled fish and salt meat could be considered as a bounty. And though it is less favored by public opinion than some other modes, its advantages are these. A, so basically what he's talking about is government support for solar energy. Back then it was government support for a domestic shipbuilding industry. Literally, we don't have a shipbuilding industry. Let's help, let's give some money to a private company to start one. Number 1, it is a species of encouragement more positive and direct than any other, and for that very reason has a more immediate tendency to stimulate and uphold new enterprises, increasing the chances of profit and diminishing the risks of loss in the first attempts. This is Alexander Hamilton, 1793. I'm reading it to you word for word, unedited. From my this is my book, Rebooting the American Dream. Number 2, it avoids the inconvenience of a temporary augmentation of price. In other words, we could buy our green energy cheaper because it's being subsidized by the government. It avoids the inconvenience of a temporary augmentation of price, which is incident to some other modes, or it produces to a less degree, either by making no addition to the charges on arrival for an article, as in the case of protecting duties, or by making a smaller addition. In other words, this is another way of keeping our domestically produced stuff inexpensive for our consumers. The first happens when the fund for the bounty is derived from a different object. In other words, let's tax oil and use it to pay for solar power. The first happens when the fund for the bounty is derived from a different object, which may or may not increase the price of some other article according to the nature of that object. The second, when the fund is derived from the same or a similar object of foreign manufacture. A 1% duty on the foreign article converted into a bounty on the domestic, in other words, they're going to subsidize the domestic instead of taxing the foreign, will have an equal effect of a duty of 2% exclusive of such a bounty. And the price of the foreign commodity is liable to be raised in the one case in the proportion of 1%, in the other that of 2%. Indeed, and he goes on and on because, this is written in the language of the 1700s, and so in any case. Oh, and number 11, the facilitation of the transportation of commodities. This is another. It's government subsidies. So this is Alexander Hamilton says we should have government subsidies. We did the and George Washington agreed with him and put them into place in 1793. And we still have them today. There are industries in a big way. In the late 1890s, 1880s, 1890s, we started subsidizing the oil industry because we saw it as a vital industry. It's driving the Industrial Revolution. And then, of course, John Rockefeller had his lobbyists. We're still subsidizing the oil industry. Well, maybe it was a good idea in the 1890s. I mean, it did build the biggest industrial economy in the history of the world. I don't think it's a good idea anymore. We should be using that money to subsidize something else. So anyhow, the two arguments that these folks make are, number one, fossil fuels are cheaper. Well, actually, no, they're not. If you consider the cost of the externalities, the cost of the cancers and the asthmas and the global warming and the fracking fluids and the coal fly ash behind the power plants and the dead miners, consider all this, they're not cheaper. But the other argument that they make is government should not be in the business of booting industries, of starting things up. To which I would say, okay, December 6, 1957. United States, why? By the way, they say, because Cylinder failed. That solar company that we were going to help out, it failed. December 6, 1957, the United States' first attempt to launch a satellite into orbit was also its first failure. 2 seconds after leaving the launch pad at Cape Canaveral, the rocket lost thrust, sank back down, blew up because of the fuel tanks. Well, that didn't work so well. Okay, let's give it up. We don't need to be a space power. Or April 4th, 1968, Apollo 6. The first unmanned test of the Saturn V rocket. It blew up. Oh, well, that doesn't work. The early ARPANET, it didn't work. We couldn't get computers to talk to each other. They had to develop TCP/IP in order to make it work, because it didn't work, because there were different computers and different operating systems. Should we have just said, screw it. You know, the mail works. You want to send a paper to somebody else? Forget about ARPANET and then DARPANET and all that stuff. You know, the early internet, which was all government. Use the post office.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
We don't need to be subsidizing no new industries, space, internet. Come on.